So cute.
Right. But now, you mentioned the sponsorships deal, which
Yeah.
I think is also a big hassle for creators, and maybe a lot of creators maybe are not at that point yet where they're actually, sponsorship is a problem for them. But
Yeah.
how did you approach it at the very, very beginning, especially as somebody that cared so much about, the content that they were doing and the connection? Did you choose your sponsors? That the right sponsors just luckily by chance approached you? Did you
Yeah.
mess up and then you learn from the
Trial and
experience?
error.
Was it trial and
Absolutely.
error?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there was a time where I got greedy, There was a time where I'm like, I'll just do that, even though I've never tried this product before.
Sure, I'll just promote
Yeah.
this worm food. It
Yeah.
has high
Like, and
protein.
it wouldn't make sense. And then now, and it's so obvious, your audience is just like, what? That is so off brand, And then you kind of lose people along the way. And then, yeah, right now I get a lot of people emailing every day, and I just kind of sift through it, like something that if I would actually purchase with my own money, that's what I would go for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And when it comes to sponsorships, what was the biggest challenge? Was it also the fact of finding the right sponsors, or knowing how to identify sponsors that were right for what you were doing? Was it negotiation? Was it being taken advantage of and bad deals? What was it for you?
I think it's just finding the right people that fit your brand as well, or fit who you are. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's very, very interesting. I really enjoyed that when I was starting the episode. I thought we were going to talk about something a little bit more specific.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, let's talk about fashion from a blogger's perspective. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, it's funny to look at how blogging or creating content really works in the same way as, being an artist would, in terms
Mm-hmm.
that they have the same principles. The details might be different, but the consistency important, the being genuine to yourself. It really is exactly the same as starting a business in a very weird way, believe it or not. Like when you're
Yeah.
starting a business and I know this because I've done the same thing of starting things that I'm not passionate about at all. Um, and it always is the same process. It's finding if you're really passionate about what you're doing, finding the right people, finding if what you're doing really, really resonates with them, and then
Mm-hmm.
just stay consistent and be patient. Because
Yeah.
that's pretty much the same formula.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Now, before we wrap this episode up, Christine, which was a very fresh perspective. Again, I knew nothing about the online content world, so it's refreshing to see that the principles that matter in all different things, whether it be content creation or any other things. But if you
Yeah.
could start back again, and I know you said that the most important thing for you was doing what you enjoyed, but
Yeah.
truly take a second or a minute to think about this question. uh, if you could go back to when you were starting out in your creative venture as a content creator, what would be the best piece of advice that you'd give yourself and why?
The best piece of advice. I guess don't chase trends. So if you see that people are doing, like, because YouTube changes pretty often, actually,
Mhm.
like every form of media, social media especially, changes pretty often. So I feel like yeah, whenever there's a new thing that comes out, like in the beginning, I feel like I might have tried to chase these trends and stuff, and it just didn't. Yeah, it doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve my audience or
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
make that mistake personally, like where you maybe a victim of shiny object syndrome and you start doing something that wasn't genuine?
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone does that, and I've done it for so long. So of course, like that's a part of it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. And if it doesn't feel authentic from the beginning, if you feel icky about it, just don't do it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because it's an emotional process, right? Like people think
Yeah.
that making mistakes is more like, oh, I negotiated this poorly and I lost $1,000 because of it, or $5,000. But in a lot most times making mistakes is more of like, oh, I again, I wasn't emotional. I didn't have a very strong sense of identity of what I was doing, and I was maybe insecure when I was started creating content. So I fell
Mhm.
victim to the trends, or I fell victim to what the advertisers were saying, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And also what I think is quite refreshing is that you get the chance, right? Like you get the chance to make the mistakes better
Yeah.
again, as long
Yeah.
as you're
Very
paying
low
attention.
stakes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As long as you're paying attention, right? Like if you see your viewership is going down, you're not doing anything about it, and you don't realize the reason why you're doing it, then eventually it could kill you. But if you consistently look for, like, I mean, you're open to understanding what you're making wrong,
Yeah.
you
And then
naturally go through that
changing.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, learning along the way and changing along the way. Just like if I were to have a business and like a product, and the product is shitty, like you would
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
go in and readjust it and then make it better. You wouldn't just keep making the same shitty product,
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
happens. It happens. It doesn't happen quite often. I think most people are
Yeah.
smart enough to realize that. It really takes
Yeah.
really high levels of denial to just keep doing things that are not good for you, are not good for
Yeah.
your audience or your customers, yet they're good for the sponsors. So I don't even know how people rationalize it. I've never actually met anybody that's made that mistake for so long. So I mean that's the good news.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Awesome, Christine. Well, very, very happy to have you on the podcast. Again, this was a very fresh take on something that I personally didn't had no idea about. I'm sure people in my audience in general won't have any idea of this either. And I think that the space that you work in is so open to misinterpretation from an outsider's perspective into what actually matters, how everything works. Because again, it's so competitive. Everyone wants to jump in, so there's so much fog and noise about the reality of how it works that I
Yeah.
felt very fresh to have a very, you know, I'm not gonna say new because it's not a new perspective. It's actually an old perspective of how things actually work.
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah.
man, I'd love to have you some other time. There's so many other things that I love to talk about. Maybe a little bit more
Yeah.
specific on takes from, again, because I've never get the chance to sit down with content creators. So it'd be a pleasure to have you on again.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure, Christina. Truly.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Anytime, just send me an email. Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode and you want to directly support our podcast, make sure you check out the links in the description.